I can't stop eating, and I think it's psychological. Help. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Syra. This week's question is from Rani, and it is, I can't stop eating, and I think it's psychological. Help! This is the show where I answer your questions about psychology, spirituality, relationships. I'm Dr. Syra, I'm a psychotherapist. So let's talk about food. Food. I think it's psychological. You know, food and eating for many people is really connected to our psychology around the way that we were nurtured, our relationships with our primary caregivers when we were kids, how food was managed in our homes. Was food a sign of connection and community? Was food a way that people controlled or exercised power in the home? There's a lot of psychology with food, and there's actually courses you can take around mindfulness and eating and the psychology of food and the psychology of weight loss and all of these different things. And so yes, it is possible and probable that your lack of ability to stop eating is psychological. Okay, so this is what I would say to start addressing that issue. So the first thing is what you've done already is to admit that, okay, there's something more going on here than me just being hungry, right? It's not just about the hunger. And one of the things that one of my teachers talked about a lot, so it's Henri McKinnon from Alberta, Canada, and he talks about what are you really hungry for, right? So though we might have a physical sensation of hunger in our belly, so the idea is, what if I were to just drink some water in that moment and ask myself, what am I really hungry for? Because food often is a stand-in for nourishment, right? And so we're looking to be nourished. And if you think about it, I was actually having a conversation with my friend the other day, and she said, we're not really nourishing ourselves with the things we need, as far as friendship and connection and meaningful work and self-esteem and all of those things that would fill us up naturally. So we're filling ourselves up with these calories. And most of us, I know at least for us, we don't actually eat out of our garden. We don't have a garden yet. But we eat food that's come from somewhere else, and who knows the conditions that the soil, who knows the conditions of the workers who were handling the food. So all of that energy gets infused, right? And then we eat this food. And if we're just eating it robotically, or if it's gone through a whole bunch of other steps before it even hits our table, what are you actually getting out of the food, right? And so what my friend was saying, she used a really interesting line. She said, we're overweight but malnourished, right? And in the sense of the nourishment is what's missing, the nourishment of connection. One of the things you might want to try if you're finding that you're hungry all the time is to actually make an effort to eat around other people. So like have a sit down and eat together with other people. The upside of that is that that's how we've been eating for thousands of years, right? It's the natural way, is that we gather around food, we have a meal together. And the other side is that you get the nourishment, right? The nourishment that's beyond just the calories that you're putting in the body, or even the nutrients that you're putting into your body. So that's one thing I would say, is that really looking at how you engage with meal times. Now, when you say I can't stop eating, another thing I would ask myself is there certain times of the day that are more difficult than others? So in the work that I do with clients, most people don't talk about binging out on chips and ice cream at 8 a.m., right? Most people are having those types of uncontrollable eating situations in the evening. Now, one of my guides and teachers, I don't know her personally, but I've been following her work, Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson. She has a program called Brightline Eating, and it talks about the science of food addiction, and how those of us who have addiction to food can actually overcome that. If you have an addiction to alcohol or cocaine, well, you could live a life without alcohol or cocaine and still be okay. But when you have an addiction to food, it's more tricky because you need food to live, right? But Susan says, well, you don't need donuts to live. And you don't need Coca-Cola to live, right? And you don't need chips to live. So it's retraining ourselves about what it is that's essential for our life force energy, right? that there's certain things you just don't need. And so she talks about how there's certain times in the day where we're stronger, and that's simply what she calls it your willpower tank, right? And she says your willpower tank in the morning is full because you wake up in the morning and you're ready to face the day. And then all day you're taking these little hits. So, I'm going to get to work on time, and so I have to do all the things I have to do and push myself to force myself to get out of bed and get ready, and then I get to work on time. So I've used my willpower to just simply get to where I need to be. I've used my willpower to say no to those donuts in the staff room, and I've used my willpower to say yes to doing tasks that I don't really want to do but I know I have to do for work. And all day you're kind of going through this process of saying yes and saying no and using your willpower. Then comes the evening. And then comes probably dinner, and then after dinner when you can finally relax, right? And at that point of the day, your willpower is pretty low. It's hard to say no to things. And that's why people often get into these like crazy arguments late at night, because nobody's really controlling themselves, right? There's all of those things you've used it all up. And so by the evening, there's this temptation to eat. And so if you're finding yourself eating uncontrollably in the evening, I would suggest that you just, couple things. One, figure out some distractions. So that maybe not TV, because a lot of people link television to food. And so maybe a different kind of distraction, like reading, going for a walk. Also, sleeping early. When I was first starting to kick my food addiction, so I have a food addiction. I've been severely obese for many, many years. And I finally got it under control the last 3 years or so. And one of the things I did when I was starting to flip into that, healthy eating or not overeating, was I'd go to bed early. So, around 8, 9 o'clock, when I'm starting to get that munchy feeling, I would actually just get into my bed and I would read a book. I'd have a tall, cold, iced glass of water beside my bed, and I would just force myself to stay in my bed. And I did that for, about 2 or 3 weeks, and then it started breaking that habit of that late night snack or that midnight snack. So those are some ideas of how you could get through this feeling of like just wanting to eat. I would strongly suggest looking into Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson's work with Brightline Eating. So it's brightlineeating.com. It's been a game changer for me, a lifesaver. I'm not always thinking about food and weight and dieting and all of those things. And I feel like I have so much more control now over my eating than I used to. So that would be something I'd recommend. I'm really enjoying these questions, so keep them coming. If you have a question that you want to submit, you can even just type that in the comments below if you want. I'm going to make another video in the future about it. And take care. We'll see you next week for Ask Dr. Syra. Bye.